Thank you, everybody, for being here today. It's going to be an exciting conversation.
All right, y'all, let's get started. I am super, super, super excited to be here. I'm going to start off by just saying hello. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 5 p.m. on a Wednesday, and you have decided to join us with Equality Arizona and the three awesome, amazing panelists that we have here today. So I'm just very, very thankful that you all came to be here right now. My name is Shelby, and I'm an organizer for Equality Arizona. Equality Arizona is a local nonprofit in Arizona. We are in the Phoenix area, whose mission is to build a strong and resilient LGBTQIA+ social movement and culture in Arizona by increasing access to safety, well-being, and inclusion in society. So anyone on this call, everyone here today, you are helping us do that by supporting us in the work that we do, and just in general, being an attendee. So I'm very much so appreciative of everything that you have done and you being here. So thank you. But why are we here today? We are here today because, as you know, that the trans community is in a moment of incredible vulnerability. This 2022 legislative session, Governor Ducey decided to sign SB 1138 and SB 1165 into law, and tons of other bills, but those are the two that we'll be talking about a little bit here today, and also some of the most notable things that have happened this year. These two bills, one banning hormone therapy for trans minors in Arizona, and the other banning access to high school sports for trans women in K-12 schools. When we consider also the additional actions of state governments across the country who are also limiting access to transitional care, social and educational opportunities, and more, Equality Arizona was looking for a way to spotlight the perspectives of people, individuals, amazing individuals who are typically silenced on the House and Senate floor. Today, Equality Arizona has invited three experts in research for an explorative discussion on the use of research in the Arizona legislature, and just in general when it comes to minority research and research in general. So we came to this idea from actually my coworker, Anyekachi, who is pursuing her doctorate at Arizona State University and was connected to Dr. Adelman, who's also on the call right now. Me and Anyekachi love this conversation about research. We love it, are a little bit obsessed, but we really, really enjoy having this conversation, and including these three experts, it makes it even better. So I'm very excited. So who are these lovely speakers? Okay, here we go. So we have Dr. Eric Plemons, Dr. Madelaine Adelman, and the awesome Josie Caballero. First, we have, and I'm gonna introduce them by reading off the biographies that we've collaborated and gotten together. And then I'm gonna ask that every person I introduce that you just say hello, and then we'll get right into the questions. So Eric is the director of the Medical Anthropology Concentration and Certificate Programs, and is the co-chair of the U of A Transgender Studies Research Cluster. Eric is a medical anthropologist focused on the politics and practice of transgender medicine and surgery. His research engages theories of sex and gender, the critical study of science and medicine, political economies of medicine and medical innovation, trans studies, anthropological, got that, theories of practice, and the studies of innovation and technique. So in conclusion, Eric is dope. Eric is a rock star, and I am so thankful that he could be here today. So Eric, could you say hello to everyone?
Yeah, hi, thank you so much for including me. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next, we have Dr. Madelaine Adelman. Dr. Adelman earned her doctorate in cultural anthropology at Duke University. Duke is a great school, so love basketball. She is now a professor of justice and social inquiry in the School of Social Transformation at Arizona State University, where she teaches courses such as research methods, sexuality and social justice, qualitative data analysis, one of my favorites, and identity and justice to undergraduate, master's, and doctoral students. New ideas about identity, violence, and the state and opposition to them animate her research on families and schools, two social institutions that shape both the content and the quality of people's lives in profound ways. And Dr. Adelman will impact our life in a profound way this evening or this afternoon. Dr. Adelman, you are also an amazing rock star. And would you mind saying hello to everyone?
Thank you for that incredible introduction. And yes, I went from being a Blue Devil to being a Sun Devil. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Wow, it's better than me. I went from being a wildcat to a sun devil, and I've never been the same. I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry, Eric. I'm sorry. And lastly, last but not least, we have Josie. Josie's a Navy veteran that worked as a nuclear reactor operator for 6 years, which is incredible. She started her political work, management, and consulting in San Diego, and then across the US for nearly a decade. Josie's diverse experience in organizing has brought her skills to work for transgender rights. Josie is a proud trans woman and the director of the US Transgender Survey and Special Projects for the National Center for Transgender Equality, an awesome organization. Josie plays a crucial role in organizing and coordinating researchers, academics, and activists across the United States to ensure the scientific integrity and efficacy of the USTS. Josie, would you mind also saying hello?
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me today. As you can see, my wonderful background, I'm actually in a hotel room. I just signed an apartment, so we're moving in tomorrow. So please forgive me, but we are still here.
Oh, no apologies necessary. You are just, you're moving, you're floating, and you're killing it. Okay, you're killing it. Yes. Well, just before we begin these questions, I wanted to go over what the goal of this event is. And I made it into a very convenient 3 L's. What? 3 L's. Okay, so we are going to try to follow the 3 L's today. The 3 L's are the number 1, learn. We're going to learn from experts on all the things that we're going to be talking about today, specifically research in the Arizona legislature and outside the Arizona legislature as well for a little bit of it. So we're going to be learning. We'll leave with the knowledge to fight back against these harmful policies in ways that aren't always in the legislature. The people on this call right now, these panelists, they are incredible, and I would really love to connect you all with the work that they do. They are leading incredible movements and are a part of such an amazing part of the world. So I'd also love to leave you with the knowledge on how to get more involved with us and with them. Last but not least, we are trying to lead these movements together with us. So we'll have a second at the end to talk about the ways you can get involved with EQAZ and in any other way, shape, or form with the work we do. Okay, we're going to get started on the questions. I am super excited, but first and foremost, we're going to start off with a good question, which is actually inspired by, and maybe I'll just do a quick book plug right here. I've been reading this book called Teach Truth to Power by Dr. Garcia, who's my teacher in school. And it has really, really kind of opened my mind to the way that research is included in the legislature. So I'm starting off with this question, which is what, as you three panelists, what are you seeing in the policy world? From your research expertise, is there a knowledge or research gap in the Arizona legislature? And if so, or if not, what does that actually look like? And I will pass it off to anyone who is interested. I didn't really make a call for this with who would pass it off to first. So feel free to come in with whoever would like to speak first. Eric? Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just start off by saying when it comes to LGBTQ plus stuff, research is not what drives policy decisions. And I think that's what we see really clearly in our state legislature, but in lots of them, is that it's not that there's some foundational knowledge based on great methodologies that's been thought through by really smart people, and that's how we get these bills. It's that none of that's happening, actually. So it's really, from my perspective, the 2 bills that you mentioned, and you can kind of go anywhere across the US to see this, are based on moral panic. And the idea that in a moment when we have a lot of cultural divides about the left and the right and sort of the direction forward, trans folks are a really easy target to use to catalyze public opinion when other things don't work that well. And so from my perspective, the question is not what is the gap, it's is there any research at all? And I think certainly in relation to the 2 bills that you mentioned just now, the answer is no, there isn't any, because it's not based on rationality. It's a moral panic kind of move.
Absolutely. Dr. Adelman, would you like to add to that?
I want to say ditto, if there's anyone here who understands what that means. I would say I echo what my colleague just said. And what's interesting is that the bills actually don't align with public opinion either. So public opinion is another form of research, right? It's kind of getting a sense, put your finger in the wind and get a sense of what people think about, how they feel about different issues or people or potential policies. And the policies, the laws that are being passed and certainly debated don't line up with general population perspectives. So there's a disconnect going on as well. And I just want to underscore the idea that these are politically motivated to get easy wins, oftentimes in primary elections. And we know that primaries win elections. So yes, do I wish, as someone who considers herself a social researcher, that research played a larger role? Sure. Unfortunately, it's not playing a role in terms of gauging what people actually want in the general public, nor is it trying to follow evidence-based interventions, if you will, that there are plenty of already. We know what works. These laws are not following what we know works.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly what's already been said. And, just some more context, there's 278 plus bills already in this country that are targeted against trans people across the state legislatures. And I think that the culture, like the idea of there's a culture war and that primary thing is very, very real. And I think to say it bluntly, like Madelaine said, was, the primaries, this is a win, this is something that they can have. So one of the things that, as the person, running, the US Trans Survey, which is such a massive undertaking and is a community-led project, what we're starting to figure out is like, okay, we need to start trying to preempt what questions we need to start asking. Right. And so, for example, we know that in this survey, we have to ask about sports, right? Trans sports, people's experiences in sports, people's experiences in locker rooms. We actually brought the age down from the US Trans Survey back down to 16 from 18. So we can actually have more data affecting that minor population that is really under attack right now currently in our country. But we also are asking much broader questions about fertility, access to abortion, in the trans community in particular. We don't have strong data that says, hey, this is how many trans people need access to abortion. And, those are the things that we are trying the best we can do. And we wish that research pushed policy, but sometimes research is an afterthought where it's like, okay, we're going to write a bill, now find some studies that agree with us, right? And we have to try to find quality, good research that legislators are going to read. But unfortunately, there's a lot of legislators out there who don't care about the good research, regardless if it's there in front of them or not. And then we have to continue to fight with them in the ballot box.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Josie. And I absolutely agree. And I really appreciate Dr. Adelman bringing up specifically that it doesn't match public opinion. It doesn't match exactly what people are feeling at home. So my next question is for you, Dr. Adelman. Governor Doug Ducey, this legislative session, like I said before, signed Senate Bill 1165, which banned trans girls in Arizona from high school sports in K-12 schools. In light of this, what does research already say about, and it's a big topic, but trans sports? What issue actually fuels this debate?
Well, as someone who's been really interested in equity for women in sports for a long time, I'm a Title IX baby. It's now celebrating its 50th anniversary. So I was really born into an era when protecting and enhancing women's sports was at the forefront, but it wasn't discussed very much, right? It's waxed and waned. And I'm saying this in a slightly sarcastic way, that it's so interesting to see the amazing growth in people who are articulating at least a real commitment to protecting girls and women in sports. For the first time, that I've heard in a very, very long time. So welcome to all our new fans of girls and women's sports. So the question is, who gets to play, right? And what we're seeing is an incredible, as you were saying, Dr. Plemons, an incredible renaissance in anti-trans animus, anti-trans bias aimed at sports. It's the bathroom piece didn't work really, really well in legislatures. And so the people who oppose healthy trans life are now moving to sports, right? It's just the next trial balloon, if you will. And we know that policies in their own nature tend to delineate between those who are deserving and those who are undeserving, right? We see this in all different kinds of policies, whether it's social welfare or reproductive justice. So the same thing is happening here. Who is deserving and who is undeserving of access to girls and women's sports? And we're seeing some people being carved out of that, right? Trans, people who are trans and or non-binary. Particularly for girls and women's sports. We know that sports, from the research that we have in the sports and recreation literature, plays such a positive role in people's lives who enjoy sports, who want to move around, who want to play, who sometimes want to compete at different levels. We know it has positive effects on people's physical well-being, on their social life, their social connection, their sense of school belonging. We know that it has effects on their emotional well-being. So there's all the pluses for people who want to opt in to sports, whether they're organized inside or outside of schools. We also know that a lot of queer people, LGBTQIA plus people, tend to avoid sports and other kinds of physical activities because they are so coded and framed by and have expectations around certain kinds of gender behavior. When you go a little bit deeper, you also see that trans people, according to a binary, trans girls and trans boys, and non-binary young people, also more so disproportionately avoid sports and other kinds of physical activity. Not surprising, right? Because it has not been a welcoming space. Now, there are a lot of young people, though, who are trans and or non-binary who do participate in sports and really benefit from it. The levels of benefit vary, and we're not going to get into the weeds right now, but all I'll say is that this kind of policy, this kind of law, which has to translate into policy, is going to replace a policy that we already have here in Arizona that was working relatively well, right? It allowed an individual person to self-identify and say, I need an accommodation. We're going to go through a set of steps and get access to a team that aligns with who I am. This new law is basically going to be giving the message that unless you conform to some pretty narrow gender stereotypes, regardless of your gender identity, in terms of your expression of your gender, you may be subjected to what I'm going to call a gender audit, a gender check. And we do not know yet what it's going to look like. And I know we might have some time to talk about that, but I would say my deepest concern is the dehumanization that is embedded in the law and the unruly, unknown consequences on everyone, regardless of gender identity. And I would just say that cisgender girls may be the largest number of people proportionately who will be affected by this anti-trans law. Perhaps not intentionally, but I'm going to predict that that's what's going to happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Adelman. And I didn't know also about, well, the previous law that was set in place and how this new bill will interrupt that. That is very interesting. And I just remember the last time we talked, you definitely mentioned that there's no way, no reason that public education should be given in only to a certain group. The benefits of public education are only given to a select group of people, and they only make up less than, I think, 1% of the total population in general, trans women. And it's thank you so much for your input, and just thank you for answering that question with, yeah.
And I just want to add one quick thing, because what
No,
Dr.
no.
Edelman said is so critical to the research we have found, that the acceptance of a trans identity increase the or decrease the level of suicidality by dramatic 9 times, according to the US Trans Survey. So in 2015. So what Dr. Edelman is saying is, combined with like the acceptance of being a part of a team and the health and all of those type of things, when you have that access, that sometimes may be the only access that that trans person has to a validation of their own identity. So this is life-saving when we get people to be able to participate in the sports that they align with, because that may be the only thing that they have to say, hey, I'm accepted. So when we send out bills that say, no, we're going to override another bill that's going to send a message where you aren't accepted, that's when we're going to have even a larger mental health crisis with our LGBTQIA folks, because this is going to, we're already starting to see it, right? We're already starting to see the increase of mental health crises of queer folks across the country, because the messages that these representatives are sending. So I just wanted to just highlight that point of like, that acceptance can mean life or death.
I think another piece to this that shows up, it's not just in the sports bill, but certainly one of them, that one of the things happening in all of these bills are kind of ways that definitions of sex get snuck into texts of bills that don't exist otherwise. And so, as Dr. Adelman's saying, since the 1920s, the International Olympic Committee has been trying to figure out a way to evaluate the sex of athletes since the first kind of scandal around sex difference in the modern Olympics. And they don't have a way. They can't come up with something. So if we think the state of Arizona, in all of its wisdom, is going to arrive at a really good way to do this, I mean, even the language of the bills itself is bad in that it says external genitalia, or chromosomes, or your birth certificate. Anybody who knows the law knows that trying to define one thing by 3 methods is a terrible process. It can't possibly work. So how you try to build a policy around 3 routes to one definition, I think, as she said, the unruliness of that is really awful to think about. When you try to imagine your child as the one who's being evaluated, it's a really terrifying prospect.
Thank you. Thank you both. And honestly, Arizona does that a lot. Now that I think about it, they use 3 things. They use like 3 things, and then they just assume that everyone will be able to identify or align with just those 3 things. I've seen that a lot, actually, now that I think about it. Well, but thank you so much for all of those amazing responses. And now that we ended with Dr. Plemons, I'm going to ask Dr. Plemons another question, if that's okay. In a similar fashion, just like I asked Dr. Adelman, the legislative session also introduced Senate Bill 1138, which was originally written as a total ban on gender-affirming care. But by the end, through conversations and lobbying, the bill was narrowed to a ban on gender-affirming surgery for youth. But what does research actually say about the access or the use of gender-affirming care for minors already?
Yeah, it's a really big question that can go a lot of ways. So I picked one way, and you can ask for a different way if we want to do it. But I think it's really important to start out by saying the phrase gender affirming care doesn't refer to one specific thing. And so the basic premises here are, first, that any one person knows more about their gender than anyone else does. So I know more about my gender than you know about me, you know more about yours. And then the second premise is that when someone says something about their gender, we should listen to them. So these are the basic places that gender affirming care begins from. I think a lot of the way, the kind of the moral panic that's been unleashed around gender affirming care for youth is this idea that what that refers to is hormones and surgery, right? And we have to break up that idea. So gender affirming care, if it's listening to a kid tell you about their gender and not trying to change their mind, that's gender affirming care. So that can include simply listening to somebody and affirming what they know about themselves. That can be helping your child have accommodations at school so that their school life reflects their own emotional well-being. It can be asking family and friends to help provide some of that affirmative care as well. And anybody who's a parent provides this kind of stuff for their kid all the time. Here, it's just around the question of gender and identity. So I think it's really important to break up the idea that all these kids, right, this sort of panic, there's all these kids going to clinics and they're all coming out with surgery. That's not happening. So in this case, we're seeing a bill to prevent a thing that almost never happens, actually, right? When the question of trans sports was introduced in the Indiana legislature, the governor first vetoed it by saying, I don't think there's a problem that this bill is solving. So why are we passing a bill with there's no problem? So around the question of surgery specifically, there are some cases in which minors do have gender affirming surgery. Usually that is for top or breast surgery. Sometimes it's for genital surgery, but it's really very rare that that actually happens. And so again, this is kind of a solution in search of a problem. And actually what the problem that I see that it's introducing is that it's asserting the legislature into the place of parents, right? Anytime there are cases when parents give consent for their underage children to have surgery, it's with parental consent. We don't ask the legislature to vote on how to treat lung cancer. We don't ask the legislature to vote on what to do when you break your arm. We don't ask the legislature to do any of that. Instead, we ask medical experts and medical associations to determine standards of care. And then that is the standard that is followed for medical treatment. So in this case, we have on the right, which is typically argued for small government, saying instead, the government should decide what parents can do to care for their children, right? The government needs to intervene. In terms of existing research, right, one of the things that happens in these laws often is they'll make a claim that is false that then becomes the law. So the false claim is there is no research done on this question. That is a false claim. There is a lot of research done on this question. One of the challenges in the United States is that for about 3 decades, we didn't have any large university-based research centers that worked on trans medicine. So a lot of the medical knowledge that we have that we use to treat people in clinic comes from European clinics that have been operating for decades. So we use that data. There are challenges with using European data, including a different system of healthcare delivery, and significantly, a different social context in which that medicine is delivered. So if you think, for example, about living in a country where your National Health Service says from the beginning, we validate this idea, we validate your identity, we're gonna help provide medical care for you. That's a really different context of care delivery than in the United States when, for example, in the state of Arizona, I as a trans person know my government does not like me. My government wishes I went away. My government doesn't value my participation. My government is, these kinds of things. So the question of what is good care has to be asked in a context that exceeds just the individual body being cared for, right? So if we ask only, is this good medicine by looking at bodies in isolation, then we don't really understand gender-related care because gender doesn't happen to bodies in isolation. So asking a different set of questions would be really important to moving this conversation along. But as I say, really crucially, writing in a bill that there is no research is false and lays the claim or lays the ground for a claim that doctors are acting irresponsibly and acting outside of the ethics of their profession, when in fact they are acting within the ethics of their profession, with the standard of care as developed by multiple medical associations. So that's how I'll answer that question at the outset, and we can certainly talk more about specifics if people have specific questions.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Eric. You just, killed it. Thank you. And coincidence, it's interesting too, because if you say there's no research on the subject, then is there a problem? Because I'm thinking about it too, where it's like, when if there's an issue in the world, people would actively pursue research. And one, there is research for this, but very interesting, very interesting. I will go back to kind of the end of what Dr. Adelman said when you mentioned that we might get more into the future and how this would affect, particularly the bill you were talking about, how it would affect cisgender women. So I asked all of you, given the responses from both Dr. Adelman and Dr. Plemons, it definitely feels, and I definitely feel that there's a detachment to trans lives and the trans experience in the Arizona legislature. And it's an active choice to detach yourself from that experience in order to continue this rhetoric, which is not a problem. There's no issue. And so how does oh, sorry. Oh, no. Sorry, I went to the wrong question. No. My bad, I apologize. I'm gonna go back one. I apologize. We're gonna get to that one though. Okay. Academics can sometimes use their research actually to predict policy outcomes, which is exactly what Dr. Adelman was getting at a little bit, to predict the good or bad outcomes certain policy decisions will have on their constituency. So to all of our speakers, in light of the bills that we just talked about, how do you think these bills will impact Arizona? Anyone can answer. Dr. Adelman?
I'll do a brief elaboration, which is, talking with teachers, educators, parents, students, there's already a chilling effect of from the debates themselves before law or laws were even passed. There's a chilling effect in terms of what's okay to say, what's okay to discuss. Is it okay to be myself fully at school or at a community event or at a social group or club after school? So there's already this kind of anticipatory, self-policing going on in terms of people being scared of this legislation. There's also a lot of confusion, I think. There's been so many bills that are intended to shut down conversation, shut down content, and discriminate against people, mainly against people who are trans. And there's a kind of a second wave that's going on at the same time that's trying to shut down expressions and discussions around racism, and they obviously are connected and they overlap. So between the confusion and the uncertainty and the inherent difficulties in trying to navigate existing standards and in these new kind of laws that are coming down the pike, I know that adults and young people themselves are trying to figure out what's possible, right? So we're trying to fill in the void, fill in the blank. So I think the chilling effect is one that's already happening. The second one is really specific, and that is when you think about sports in school, if you back it up a little bit, you realize that people have requirements to complete a physical education class, right, in school. It varies from elementary to middle to high school. You have options sometimes depending upon where you live in the state of Arizona or elsewhere about how you complete those requirements. But requirements there are. And one of the goals of being a PE teacher and educator is to expose young people to all the joys and possibilities of the different sports that are out there, whether it's badminton or football and everything in between. So what we're asking our teachers to do, our PE teachers in particular, is to educate their students about the array of sports there are and to encourage them to get to know their bodies and physical activity and health, the health effects of being involved in sports. And then they're being asked to tell, yes, a small percentage, but I don't think we're okay with it. They're being asked to tell certain students in the class, well, you can't participate in those sports, sorry. So you can practice them, you can learn about them, you can be tested on them in your PE class, but no, our school.
Oh no, Dr. Adelman, for some reason the sound went out.
Oh, are you able to
hear
you're
back.
Me? Okay.
Yes, I just heard for some reason, I don't know.
I will blame Cox Cable. Thank you very much.
Oh, of course, yep.
I was repeating myself anyway, as academics do. We're telling educators that you need to educate all your students, and the law is intervening, just like the anti-trans health law intervenes between the relationship between a person and their doctor, their healthcare provider. An anti-trans sports bill intervenes between a student and their educator.
Yes. That's a great point. Dr. Plemons, yes.
just to echo that chilling effect, once the state expresses its opinions about a particular class of people, then it's an expectation that the state can act differently toward that class of people, whether it's legal or illegal, right? There is already a stated kind of position of authority toward trans people, and that translates across all kinds of official interactions, whether that's legal or illegal. I think another piece that has a significant effect is if you look at Texas, for example, that passed the law allowing providers who provide gender affirming care to youth to be investigated for child abuse. You saw clinics already close in Texas that were providing that kind of care. What that does is it doesn't stop that care. It makes it harder for the kids in Texas to get it. And it exposes those kids, therefore, to the multiple types of harm that come with people who are marginalized explicitly and politically and publicly by all the grown-ups around them. The same thing will happen in Arizona. We don't have nearly the kind of care provision in Arizona that trans people need, but even still, that kind of you're not welcome to practice your specialty here really does happen. I think ultimately there will be a lot of court cases that surround these, because fundamentally this is a due process question. And if back to the question of medical care for minors, parents sign off on medical care for minors all the time for all kinds of reasons. You can, at 12 years old in the literature, have a breast augmentation, or you can have a breast reduction at 12 years old. That's not the question before the state. The state is, can you do that if you're trans? Right? So these will become parity issues. When you say this person can have chest surgery and this person can't, non-medically necessary gender-related surgery, some people can and some people can't, that will become a legal issue and problem for the state. Along with, as I was saying before, these very nonsensical definitions of sex are going to become a problem because they don't make sense. And the first time that somebody has to pull down their pants to prove what sex they are, that's going to be a huge problem. So I think there are both legal issues, there are moral issues, and it's the climate of what does it mean to live in a state that has an official position of despising you. You know, when I transitioned 20 something years ago, no one quite knew what to do with me. And there were challenges associated with that. But now I know exactly what the government thinks about me. And there's an impact on that, especially for kids.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Commons, for that. Because I want to piggyback on it with some of the data that we were able to find in 2015 on Arizona specifically. You can find these reports on ustranssurvey.org currently on the 2015 reports, and you can actually find the reports directly from Arizona, and I'll highlight a few. So in the respondents that took the survey back in 2015, 74% of those who were out and perceived as trans at some point between kindergarten and grade 12 experienced some form of mistreatment, such as being verbally harassed, prohibited from dressing accordingly to their gender identity, disciplined more harshly or physically, or sexually assaulted because people thought that they were transgender. And I bring that up because it gives the authority, if the state is saying, hey, like you can't be trans, that's just going to increase that already shocking number of 74% of students in Arizona that attended a school as trans. And going to the health section, I'm really glad you brought that up as well, because in Arizona, 33% of trans people who saw a healthcare provider in the last year, so that would have been in 2014, reported having at least one negative experience related to being trans, including being refused treatment, verbally harassed, or physically or sexually assaulted, or having to teach the provider about trans people in general in order to just get care appropriately. So these barriers already exist, like without these laws, right? This is Arizona before these laws. And we're already seeing 1/3 of the trans population having these type of issues at the provider. And there's much more data to look at, but I wanted to highlight those two things because we already are failing as a state in serving trans people. And now we're just going to add another barrier to making it more difficult for a trans person to exist in the state of Arizona, especially with the bills that we were discussing. So it's a critical thing, and we're just making things worse when they were already not great.
Thank you. Thank you, Josie, so much. And I am very much so looking forward to the results of this next United States Trans Survey. And I love how you set it up with all 50 states. I definitely read the one for Arizona, and it was, yes. It leads me to my next question, which I think you've already answered, and but I really want to hear more about how the work that you do in particularly shines light on the misconceptions that so many people have about what it's like actually to be trans. I just really want to give you a second just to talk about why the USTS is just super important right now.
Absolutely, thank you. The US Trans Survey is one of the largest data sets that we have of the United States. In 2015, we had almost 28,000 people take the survey. And that was back in 2015. And now that we've seen, more and more people come out, the public acceptance has increased, even though our laws make it seem that it hasn't. But it has, like we've talked about, public opinion of trans people have been going up as far as like, yeah, people are trans, that's okay. So with the US Trans Survey, the one that's coming up now, we've expanded what has already been a very successful model for the US Trans Survey, but really we're able to use the success of the survey back in 2015 to actually increase what we're asking. So like I said before, we're asking about sports in a very specific way, access to locker rooms. People who are 16 are now able to take the survey and above. We are asking questions on COVID. So we're going to be able to find out how COVID affected trans lives, abortion access, fertility, because a lot of insurance companies don't cover fertility. They don't really talk to a trans person about family planning unless it's like, hey, if you take this medicine, you may have hard time having, biological children. Those kind of conversations happen, but there's never a conversation about, hey, do you want to preserve your biological material? Those type of questions don't come up. So we're asking how many people actually want access to those type of things. And we're also going in depth with family planning. So we're asking more questions about adoption and access to being able to adopt. These are the things that we really need to know more data on, but because, and this is when I'm really excited and I can announce this, we almost have 27,000 pledges so far, which is fantastic. When I just said we had 28,000 respondents in 2015. So we've already have close to 28,000 people that are pledging to take the survey. And that number is always much lower than the people who actually take the survey itself. So if you haven't taken the pledge, please do. It's at ustranssurvey.org. But this data set is going to be critical in the fight for trans, justice when we're talking about about these laws. Since 2015 has been cited in Supreme Court briefs. The survey has been critical in making sure smaller organizations have the ability to prove why they need to exist, making sure that academics and researchers have access to strong demographic data that not only just goes into the trans issues, but it also cuts and intersects with race, age. We have priority populations that are people living with HIV, AIDS, people living in rural areas, all the minority populations, adults above the age of 45 and above. Like, we are really trying to give a really strong snapshot of what it looks like to be trans in the United States. And I'll just say, as part of our success, we already have about 4.6% of the people who have pledged are people who identify as Indigenous, Native American, or American Indian. That is so exciting because that's 4 times the number that we were able to get in 2015. And that's just in pledges alone. We don't know how many people are actually going to take the survey, which is usually more. So when we talk about what the US Trans Survey is, it is a huge data set for people to be able to dig in, like Dr. Plemons and Dr. Adelman are going to be able to actually take this data and create new questions, ask stronger questions because we're going to have more in-depth data of people who are sharing their stories. And I think that will be the last piece on this is the US Trans Survey is powerful because it's a community-led survey by trans people for trans people. And we have been able to accomplish by just telling our stories, just saying, hey, this is what it looks like to be trans in the United States, has been one of the most powerful tools that we've had in our arsenal because we're talking about research right now. This data is critical to make sure that we're able to come up with the fresh arguments, with the fresh studies, and all the things that we rely on as researchers and policymakers, and educating policymakers and educators and academics across the country. So I can talk US Trans Survey all day because I love it. It's my baby. It's our baby. So we really want to just be thankful and also thank Arizona Equality for also supporting and making sure that people in your community are actually taking the pledge and will take the survey later this summer. So we are really excited. So again, if you haven't taken the survey, it is at ustranssurvey.org. You could be trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, or maybe think you might be trans. Take the survey. Those are the things that we really want the community response on.
Thank you, Josie. I just want to let you know you got that link down. I put it in the chat. I will be leaving. I don't know if you've noticed as well, but this time that we're here together is a little bit longer until around my time, 7 p.m. But that's because I will be staying on for an extra hour to ensure that I answer as many questions as I possibly can about the US Trans Survey, and also ask every single person on this call who's an attendee to go on that link right now and go pledge. It is super helpful, and it's obviously, Josie, your passion, and it's transferring, it's like transferable over to me. So just thank you so much for just everything. And yes, it's in the chat. Go search that. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes. I have been in love with this conversation. I am so happy right now. Everyone here is amazing, and just I'm blown away. So I know that we don't have as much time, but Dr. Plemons created this amazing question that I'd love to end with, if that's okay. Because I think that it is such a cool question. So my last question for everyone here is, if you could wave a magic wand and have a solid answer to one currently unanswered research question, what would it be and why?
I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat and talk about a question that's part of a project I'm involved with that I want to say is a small and mighty research team of graduate students, undergraduates, community members, partners, including Equality Arizona. So thank you. We're interested in the effect of storytelling advocacy on the storyteller, as well as what kind of traction stories around trans youth experiences of PE and sports might have on listeners. But we're also interested in kind of on the health effects and the long-term, short and long-term effects of storytelling advocacy on the people who are engaging in this work. You know, kind of flipping the table, looking at what does it do for, and what might it take from the people who are engaged in this kind of frontline work. And I just want to also sneak in a commercial and say that, of course, we would love people to participate in our research, and we can send an email to you all about that. But I wanted to urge anyone who has a connection to a school to encourage school leaders not to wait for a young person who happens to be trans and non-binary to present themselves to you, to start doing those reflections and reforms that are needed in your school today. We don't need to have that one person trigger some kind of crisis-based response. We can proactively make these changes, and we know how. I'm going to put a few resources in the chat to that end.
Yes, and before I pass that baton over to someone else, I have Dr. Plemons, I did put TNB stories that Dr. Adelman helps and leaves in the chat right there. TNB stories, and we can get to that later, but just so everyone knows, it is a research, community-based research project and digital storytelling, advocacy, and the well-being of Arizona. It's awesome. It's a community-based research effort that also focuses on addressing Arizona trans non-binary youth in sports and PE, all at ASU. So please give it a look if you have a second. We were also going to plug that in too. So, all right, back to Dr. Plemons. If you could wave a magic wand and know something, what would it be? I want to know why Cox keeps messing up. That's what I want to know. Because it's ridiculous. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. One of the things I always tell my students is when you hear somebody say, we have to do X to protect the children, and we have to do X to protect the women, you better start looking at what X is, because that's just a real cheap way to try to whip people into a frenzy over things. As Dr. Adelman says, most people don't care about women most of the time, but all of a sudden, here we have to now make this big political issue. So one of the things that's really fascinating to me is that most estimates, and Josie knows better than I do, put the percentage of trans people in the US at under 2% somehow, right? If you didn't know that, and you just read the newspaper headlines, you would think that we are like 85% of the population jumping out of sewer grates to grab children and pull them in. Like the amount of ink spilled over the panic of the existence of trans people versus our actual presence in the population is wildly disproportionate, right? Wildly. So one of the things that I would love to understand is, what is the cost measured in all the kinds of ways, right? Mental health, physical health, economics, of working actively across multiple policy domains to maintain the marginalization of less than 2% of the population. The amount of labor that it takes to make sure that we are disproportionately homeless, that we are disproportionately unemployed and underemployed, that we disproportionately drop out of schools, that we disproportionately don't get medical care, that we disproportionately have high rates of HIV and other STIs. The amount of labor that it takes to maintain that is incredible. And the cost comes not only to trans folks and our lives and people we love, but to the economy in general, to the community in general, to the state. I mean, the amount of labor that goes into that. I would love to be able to quantify that as one way of speaking back to the unreason of non-research-based policy that you talked about before. Like, if you just stopped doing that, right? I don't need anyone to understand what it's like to be me, because I can respect lots of people who I don't understand what it's like to be them. I don't have to understand you to be able to provide respect to you. What I would just like is for them to stop doing that and see what would happen. So that would be the question I would want to ask.
Yeah, I echo. I was like, yes, I want answers to all those things too. I just want it all. So I'm going to go a different direction, since you said pretty much the things that I think I would have said. Is I really would like to see, and this is maybe plug in a little bit of the trans survey as well, I really want to see the resiliency of our community. I want to see happiness scales, right? We're actually asking, like, is it cool to be trans? Like, does it make you feel better now that you're trans? Is it, out and public? Like, has your quality of life gone up? Like, those are the questions that I really want to know, as well as, that 2% number may be generous, Dr. Plemons. Like, that, we may be 1%. We don't know. And I think I would love to know, like, what the population of people who are not cis are. Right, and actually know what that percentage is, so we can actually see what effects that population has, and maybe we can destigmatize this thing about, oh my gosh, we're a social contagion, and all of these things are being said, but it's like, there's like less trans people than there are redheads walking around. Right, like that's the reality, right? And so I would like to know what that is, because you're absolutely right. We're pulling our hairs out for such a small marginal group, and people have created a caricature of who trans people are, right? Like, people don't see, when people think of a trans person, like, just doesn't know a trans person, doesn't see a person like me, or a person like you, Dr. Plemons, or anybody that on this call that I didn't ask if we all guys are all trans or not, but so no assumptions here. So like, they don't see like an average human doing their daily job, making those things happen. And if people were to understand that we are just regular people, that we are just living our lives, nothing's happening, the world isn't burning down, I think that would be very helpful for people to understand what it would be. So I know I kind of rambled around the bin there, but yeah.
Oh no, beautifully said. Beautifully, beautifully, beautifully said. Thank you. I am blown away, and I am just so, so, so eternally grateful that I was able to have you three on the call today. I had such a fun time, and I'm sure all of our attendees did as well. But first and foremost, can we give the biggest round of applause to our panelists? If you're here in the attendee section, you can put an emoji in the chat or whatever, or the panelists, just do it for yourself because you're amazing. So that's all that matters. I want to thank you, Les, but thank you again, Dr. Plemons, Dr. Adelman, and Josie for the work that you do, everything you do. It's amazing, and I'm eternally grateful. So if you haven't noticed, again, I know that this session was from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Probably won't go till 7, but we've left it out this last hour because we want to make sure that everyone pledges to the United States Trans Survey. So I'm going to put that link in the chat one last time. I would love everyone right now to go and pledge to ensure that we all know when the United States Trans Survey is launched, because it's really important that we all know. I pledged as well, so everyone better pledge. Okay, go ahead and pledge. Second, I'm going to ask everyone on this call to do one of two things. Dr. Adelman works on this awesome community-based research project about digital storytelling, advocacy, and the well-being of Arizona trans, non-binary youth in sports and PE here at ASU. I'm gonna plug it in, I'm plugging it in. So I would love for everyone, if you could go to the other link that I'm sending in here for Dr. Adelman. You can do one of two things. Go like one of their pages, either Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I like their Facebook. So it's up to you, whatever you like. But you also can submit an interest form online as well to share your story, share this information with someone else to encourage someone else to share their story, or just get more involved in the work that they do throughout the year. I'm super excited to see where TNB Stories is in a year from now or a month from now. I'm very excited. So thank you again for just being awesome, Dr. Adelman. Last but not least, Equality Arizona is having another town hall. What? That's crazy. Last but not least, Equality Arizona is having another town hall because we keep doing these. Yeah, we just keep going. We are having another town hall at the end of next month. Come join Equality Arizona and the Secretary of State's office with Katie Hobbs to talk about election security. Whew, now that is a difficult conversation, and not even difficult. Definitely, like, there was never an issue. So why are we, you know what, whatever, whatever, I'm not gonna talk about it. So if you would like to, please come to that next one, because that one is also gonna be super fun, and we'll have the Secretary of State's office there as well. Wow, I am shooketh. We are here and it's 6 p.m. I am so, so grateful for everyone who's come on the call. I want to say have a great night to you all. Enjoy your time. And Josie, I'm going to ask you for your t-shirt size, because I'm going to send you an Equality Arizona t-shirt. Don't tell my boss. Just ignore that. Don't tell him I'm doing this. Just let it go. Don't tell him. Okay, great. Okay. Thank you so much for everyone that's popped on. I'm going to stay on for a little while longer if anyone's here to answer any questions about the United States Trans Survey, and make sure that you all pledge. That's it. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you, Dr. Plemons. Everyone send some love to him because he's awesome. And yeah.
Thanks everyone. So much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you. Take care. I'll stick around since it's the U.S. Trans Survey conversation. I'll be around for all the questions that need to be answered.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Josie. Well, thank you, Dr. Plemons, Dr. Adelman. Feel free to log off. And attendees, thank you so much for attending. Feel free, if you have any questions, to add it in the chat. Oh, yay. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
I will say that during this call, the number of people that have pledged from Arizona have been going up. So we right now, it's working. I'm watching it real live time. And so one of the things is that Arizona now is 2.3% of all the pledges across the United States at 612. We are Oh, sorry, 602. 612 is Minnesota. So let's send out some messages, get 10 more, and we'll be beating Minnesota on the list. Come on, we can do it. We can do it.
Beat Minnesota. Beat Minnesota. Beat Minnesota. I don't have any beef against Minnesota, but now I do.
Now we do.
Gosh. Forget Minnesota. Jeez Louise. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. All right. I say, whoa. Before, yeah. What's your shirt size, Josie? Oh, you don't have to tell me it's on.
I'm a small. I'm small.
No.
It's fine. Okay, we got two more. We got two more pledges since we've been on this conversation, so it's great.
Yes. And Jericho just asked, already done. Did I miss when the survey is going live? What date does the survey go live?
So we are going to be expecting a late summer release. We are still making sure all of the bugs are worked out because we want to make sure that we send a product that isn't buggy. So we are hoping for a late summer release. So I would expect, let's say around August. And I think that's when we're going to do it. That's when the survey was run in 2015, actually, which is a little bit of trivia knowledge. Also, another fun trivia knowledge is that the National Trans Discrimination Survey done in 2008 is actually the predecessor of the US Trans Survey. A lot of people don't know that either. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. So thank you.
I have tons of little trivia things like that.
Oh, and I see Alex Ocean, you put something in the chat and it's an incredible question. I'm going to read it out and see if we both can give you some insight. Hello, thank you for this discussion. I'm Alex. Sorry, I don't need to read everything about it. I'm so sorry. I've been interested in how the medical field has been improving treatments and deepening our understanding of our bodies. As a trans girl, I often wonder about the progress being made in a few places, such as including improved medications, such as FDA approved by, I was a microbiology major. Thank you so much. Please, Louise, microbiology major and can't pronounce a single chemistry.
It's okay. I'm a trans girl. I know exactly what she's talking about. Or they are. Sorry, they.
Yes.
I saw the woman part. I apologize. I'm sorry, Alex.
Alex, feel free as well to type in the chat. We'd love to talk with you if you,
Absolutely.
Feel free. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I feel like I should make Alex a panelist now because Alex would come. You don't have to though. You don't have to, Alex. You can say if you want to. If you want to though, let me know. Okay. But yes, all of these things.
All these things. So, so approval and WPATH also improved knowledge and access to estradiol implants, stem cell treatments such as lab-grown vaginas and stem cell breast augmentation, uterus transplants, breastfeeding support, counseling for trans women grieving infertility. That's a good one. Thank you for that one, Alex. I haven't really thought about that one because I definitely went through that. Research around the anecdote that some trans women on HRT experience PMS, period symptoms, insurance coverage, and things deemed as cosmetic like removal and voice training. Thank you so much for that very incisive question, specifically around things we don't know a lot of information around because we don't have unfortunately, the infrastructure of the research that we need, right? We need a governing board for transgender surgery. We need a transgender medical, board for the United States, right? Like we have American Cardiology, we have all those things, but we don't have like these medical like industries that are designed for trans medicine. It's kind of just lumped into endocrinology, which you pointed out by WPATH, because WPATH, which gives our standard of care of trans people, they're the clinicians that are doing this work time and time again to try to get all of this data to show that these medicines and these treatments are safe. So one of the things that the US Trans Survey is doing is that we're actually asking questions about what services that we wish we had, right? Like voice training, you know, fertility treatment on the, like what we were talking before. But I love the need, like explaining all of these things, because these are the questions that need to be asked. Because one of the things as a researcher, you know, as a trans researcher in trans, you know, issues, is that we need to figure out where the need is too. Right? Because right now we're just trying to make sure that people have access to hormones, making sure that people have access to gender affirming surgeries. So we need access to all of it. So I wish that I had more of an answer on where we are and when are we going to get these things. But I will tell you, on the US Trans Survey, we're going to have a number of trans folks across the country that want these things. So please, 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 another reason why we need to know this, because if we have the power and we say, oh my gosh, 25% of trans women want this, right? Or trans people want this, then we're going to be able to say, hey, insurance company, why aren't you providing this? Why, hey, medical providers, why aren't you having counseling with your patients to say that they want access to fertility? Like, those are the things that we need to know. And unfortunately, Alex, like the way that it is still a black box. And we are completely limited. There's a endocrinologist shortage across the United States. It's hard to find an endocrinologist. We have gender clinics that are being under attack across the country. So once we start moving on something, something tries to shut us down. So there are so many barriers, but everything that you listed on this list should hopefully be allowed and have access to. You know, uterus transplants, that's still very new technology, and I can't speak to where we are on that technology yet. I know we have given uterine transplants to cis women, which is a good sign as far as where the science is going. But we definitely still, this just proves, this list proves how much further we have to go when it comes to trans medicine. And thank you for highlighting all those things. I wish I could give you a better answer. Is there anything else you want to say to that? I know I kind of spoke at you for a second there. Oh, okay, Alex, good. No shame, you can be they, them all the time. They, them, she, her, do them both, do a combo. It's all good, whatever you want.
A combo. Thank you so much, Josie, too. Both of you, Alex, thank you for the awesome question. And Josie, thank you so much for answering. You're incredible. So do we have any other questions from any of the other attendees who are here? I saw tons of people say that they signed up and they pledged. So I'm super, super, super excited, but I'd love to answer anyone else's questions. If anyone else that needs anything or has any questions for us.
Right. So we definitely went from 600 in Arizona throughout this entire conversation to 605. Where it's okay.
Yes!
More people. Come on. I know y'all, you people, all of you in Arizona are going to be able to beat Minnesota. I have faith in you. Shelby, I'm going to be giving you updates.
You better. You better, because honestly, we had like around, I think it was like 16 attendees, and to have 5, oh no, I'm going to people's houses.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm going to people's homes.
You know,
I'm coming for y'all.
That's right. And, you know, just to say, in 2015, we got about, I think, 509 Arizona respondents, and we're already at 605 pledges. So we're going to even have a larger in value than we did in 2015 with Arizonians, which is super great.
I love this. Oh, and Jericho has another question too. What is the time frame for results, and how do these results from the survey contribute to policy or social, et cetera, change?
Yeah, so the time frame of the results, we're gonna probably be seeing the preliminary numbers, like some of the big, executive summary numbers probably coming out at the end of the year and probably beginning of next year. The US Trans Survey report is massive, including 50 breakout reports for the states, and then we also have a couple for US territories, as well as a breakout report for every minority group that we have enough of an in-value significantly so we can actually do those breakout reports. So it takes quite a while for us to compile these results, get them written, get them vetted by the community, because this is a community-led survey. So we make sure that the community can review what the numbers are looking like for their own communities. So there's a lot there. So we're hoping that all of the major results are all going to be out by the first quarter of next year. So hopefully by March of next year, we'll probably see the full report. We tried to get it out sooner. I have been working the researchers to the bone, trying to make sure that we get this survey out, and they have been working diligently for over a year and a half now. I've been working on the project since January of last year. So we have really put a lot of work and love and care into the survey. So we're hoping to get real top line data probably right at the beginning of next year. And then the final reports probably March timeframe. That's what I'm hoping. It could be as late as April or May, but it just depends. Like, for example, just a week ago, all of our researchers got COVID. And so things like that are happening. So it's hard to make a direct promise. So, but I know we can do it at least the first half of next year, we can get it all done. That's my commitment.
I love that comment. That's incredible. Yeah. And I'm wondering too, because we've been referring to the 2015 trans survey results. How often would we like to make this a standard? Like, I could definitely see, and the USTS should have the same power, like the census, and even the census lacks in power as it should, but it would be amazing and incredible to see this being a yearly thing. Is that the goal, or?
So the goal is actually every 5 years. We did have, the National Center for Transgender Equality did have a survey scheduled for the 2020, but we all know what happened in 2020, and COVID happened, right? So COVID turned everything upside down. So the researchers made a conscious decision to say, we do not need to be gathering data on trans people when everybody's lives are upside down. And we wouldn't have a good, stable number of data and data numbers that would have some sense of normalcy. Of course, we're in a new normal. So that's why we delayed from 2020 to 2022 to give people 2 years after the initial pandemic shock to actually then start asking people's access to public accommodations, for example. If we were asking access to public accommodations in 2020, and people are like, oh, I haven't been to a public place, so I haven't had an opportunity to interact with the public. So we may skew the numbers of like, oh, nobody went out, so nobody had any harassment or discrimination against them, for example, right? When that's not the case, or how masks affect our lives as trans people, kind of like hiding half of my face. I know I'm a COVID trans girl, right? Like I came out, like I started my medical transition like literally the day before we locked down in California. And so when I went out, I had a mask on. So even before I had access to like laser hair removal, my confidence was way up, right? Because all I had to do was like show my face. And so that helped me out a lot as well. So we had to think about how we were going to ask those questions, right? And see how those things laid out. So that's why we weren't able to do it 2022, but the goal has always been every 5 years. Because we want to hold comparability, and then over time we'll have that legacy data that says, okay, over time, this is what bathroom accommodations have looked like. Over time, this is what, sports accommodations have looked like in the future, and things like that. So you're right on it. Yep, we want to ask every 5 years to have that comparability so we can actually have a timeline showing, are things getting better, which is important.
And I think it also to like say like every year in itself, it kind of says that like change could really happen, because change can happen in a year. But as obvious as we know, since we had this conversation, so many people are so uncomfortable by the idea of just in general, the existence of trans people, trans folks. So we are in such a tolerant society, not an accepting society, a tolerant one. So I can't imagine that the dramatic effect of having more and more people that are being more unapologetically themselves will happen in just a year. It is going to take time because we've got a lot of people who are not very kind.
No,
And
not at all. And we're really going to see those numbers and how they break out once we have the survey results, because we're going to be able to see, okay, where are people being accepted? Where are people living? We're going to be able to see, we're also asking questions about, are you planning on moving from your state because of trans laws and things like that? So we'll hopefully also be able to see some migrations and not hopefully see migrations, but we'll identify migrations that are happening in our data and research as well, because you can have huge brain drain that way, right? Where people are just like, I'm not living in Alabama because they won't let my kid have access, right? And those are the things that are really happening. Like the U.S. Air Force just put out an order saying that if your family is affected by a Florida, Texas, Alabama bill that makes it harder for your child to get access to medical care, we will provide it. And if the laws don't let you do it, we'll move you to another base where you can actually have access to your family care, which is, I mean, fantastic to see, like, so an organization like the Air Force take a stand like that. Now, do we know the data? Do we know how many people are taking action? They're not going to share that, right? I wish we had the data on that. But we do know that there are messages happening because it helps readiness, right? How are you going to serve overseas if your child lives in a state that now has to detransition, right? It's like,
yes,
that's not going to make you a very good service member if you're worrying about that type of stuff, right?
absolutely. Thank you for bringing that in. I had no idea as well. Well, it could have been. Have you seen that show? Sorry, on Netflix, Space Force.
Yeah, I have.
Oh my gosh, I wish Space Force was, well, if it was real.
I know.
They would live right. They would do it right.
They would. They would.
They would.
Hey,
Right.
we're actually asking if you're a member of the or were a member of the Space Force, so we'll know how many trans people, if they choose to take it, or part of the Space Force. Yes.
Are you a part of the Space Force? Only the real people. Only the real will get it. Only the realists. Only the. Oh, such a good show. Anyway, all right. Are there any other questions from some of the attendees today? Thank you, Jericho. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone, for all your questions that you have. Nick, Dylan, Rachel, any questions?
Okay, great. We have a question in the Q&A. I don't know if you want to read it or read it to yourself first.
I'll read it to myself. This already looks very good. Very good question.
Yeah. So yes, very good question on the inclusion of all identities. When you're talking about researchers and the categories and the buckets that we create, that's a very, very good question, because in research, we tend to put people in buckets. So we can like say, okay, here's the trans woman bucket, here's the trans man bucket, here's the non-binary bucket. And then we try to match those, categories so we can have like cohesive data. But you are absolutely right on making sure that we are identifying people for where they are. One of the mottos that one of our principal investigator says, Dr. Jody Herman, who is fantastic, she says, we meet people where they are. So one of the things that we do is we have a very long list of different types of gender identity and how people identify themselves. It's like literally, it's almost 2 pages long as far as this list. And when you like scroll through the select what gender identity you identify with, and you get to select multiple. Right. So we actually have the ability to actually see how people actually identified, and versus the next questions was like, okay, if you had to put yourself in one of these buckets, what would they be? And then we, throughout the survey, will identify you either as trans, right? As like, we're gonna identify, for the sake of the survey, we're gonna identify as trans. And that's kind of how we kind of go throughout the survey. But we ask your comfortability throughout that entire process. It's not a situation where it's like you're just slotted into the survey as this identity. It is a very catered process for the person who is taking this survey. And, you know, we call it our gender identity and inclusion section of the survey, because we know, as you know, as trans people here, right, like we have the ability to understand that gender is a kaleidoscope, right? We know that there is no one flavor for everybody, right? So we allow people to kind of like select who they are and be who they are. We accept who you are, and then we start asking questions about your experience. And that's the best we can do. But if you're a researcher and you want to go, hey, I want to go into the US Trans Survey data, and I want to do a study of people who identify as, you know, boy gender, right? Or I want to do a study on what people who identify, you know, as, you know, fair or in those type of categories, where you're going to be able to actually dig into that data and actually do your own analysis on those specific identities. And that's what our goal was when we did the US Trans Survey, is to really create a sandbox for any researcher that wants to research in depth what a trans person's experience is like. We don't only do that with gender identity, we also do that with race and ethnicity as well, which in the researchers hate when I say this, it's groundbreaking. Okay, we are asking questions about race and ethnicity that we never have, that you haven't really seen a lot of surveys across the country. We worked with someone called Abigail Echohawk, who brought the term decolonization of data to our process, to our research team. So when we started asking questions about people's tribal affiliations, or we started asking people about their Asian identity, we were like, Asian's not enough. You need South Asian, you need Southeast Asian, you need, Pacific Islander, you need all of these different types of people, and then break down Southeast Asian. Is that India? Is that Thailand? Like, we really did take a lot of effort to ensure that people's racial identities as well as their gender identities were being respected every step of the way. But as you know, in research, it's hard to give out reports and data, but we do our best to make sure that people go into the survey being able to identify who they are, from their race, ethnic identity, to their gender identity, to all of the way across the survey. So that's one of the things that we try to do our best on. And I hope that if you do take the survey, that you feel that you are being seen. Because I will tell you, I've already taken the survey, you know, because I have to like test it out. And even just taking it, even though I've helped with the curating of making sure all the things are doing, I still feel so seen taking the survey. Like, I'm just like, oh, this is so great. Like, I get to say that I'm a trans woman, and I get to say I'm Puerto Rican, Mexican, and Panamanian, right? Like, I've never had a survey be able to identify me in such a deep, profound way that actually hears my story and what my life in the United States has been like as those intersectional identities. So yeah, thank you for that question. I know that was a long answer, but it's something that I actually care deeply about, and I know the researchers care deeply about, and everybody at NCTE care deeply about as well.
I will say, without a doubt, in any other situation, taking a survey and then having it get longer, given the responses that you have, for any other survey, like if you're submitting one based off of like a teacher evaluation, then you're like, oh, I don't want that extra question. But to hear that the United States Trans Survey, from what Alex Del Rosario was telling me, every time you answer something on there, that it can guide you to a new question based off your lived experience and the way you identify. So I loved to hear that. And I'm very, very happy that, and just excited that you are offering everyone a seat at the table. I'm very, very happy. And I love that word you use, sandbox. You said it was a sandbox. And also groundbreaking is not used that often, okay? If it's groundbreaking, it's groundbreaking, okay? So that's what I think. Anyway, I wanted to uplift Rachel as well in the chat. Rachel, you're an eventual to be data scientist. Congratulations that you're on that journey. That's incredible. And ask that question. That level of stratification and granularity, obviously I'm not a data scientist, granularity is both affirmative and responsive. So cool. Thank you, Rachel.
And Rachel, and if you are studying research, like you're going to be able to really look at the survey and be like, hey, I want to know more about that. And, you know, if you're a researcher, you're going to be able to get that data. And that's something that we really are happy about the survey in the past, as it has been cited so much in so much research across this country and world. But giving trans researchers or just researchers that are interested in trans issues in general access to this data and letting them, you know, do what they need to do to figure out their own journeys and their own understandings and be better researchers as a whole. We're just so happy to be able to provide that data set for all of you.
All right, everyone. Any more questions for the amazing Josie or anyone else? I mean, probably not me though. I don't know.
Shelby, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Don't sell yourself short. What are you talking about?
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I will say, as someone, so some of these data questions I can't always answer, but it's really interesting to hear, or just it's fun to hear those answers because I've always liked data and liked looking at it, but then I have to understand it. And I'm like, oh, what? What is that? What does that mean? Anywho, any other questions for us?
On that point, though, Shelby, I will tell you right now that that's been something that we've also been talking about at the NCTE and the survey research team, is making sure before we put out those reports that it makes sense to the community who's reading the reports about themselves. And so
what an amazing point.
Yeah, so we are trying our best to work with community leaders and activists to deal with the communities that those reports actually serve, to make sure that the literacy as well as the information that we're sharing is relevant, right? That we need to be able to say, okay, these are the things that are happening for this community. Is this the stuff you want to highlight? Right, and I cannot wait for the report writing section of this project, because I get to work with like the most amazing humans to basically say, hey, we have all this data. How do you want us to organize it for your community? Right, like that's something that we're also doing that I don't think a lot of surveys have done before. Just trying to make sure that the literacy stays great, not only for the survey itself, because the literacy stays low, right, for the survey, but we also want to keep that same standard for the report too, right? Like, why do we have to make it such a high level, you know, jargony conversation when we're just talking about people's access to healthcare? Right? Like, it should be simple to be able to just go open up the book and say, oh my gosh, 33% of trans people don't have access to healthcare and they have these issues. Like, it needs to be that easy. And that's one of the things that we're also working. So you don't feel that way, Shelby. So you feel like when you read this data, it's like, yep, that's right. Yep, I understand that with ease, which is important as well, because you're doing the work on the ground. What good is data science if people on the ground using it for their own needs can't use it effectively? Because it's a tool, and we want to make sure that it's an effective tool that anybody can use.
Absolutely, and I love this conversation. I love this part of this conversation because I absolutely agree with the jargony, excessive information and some of the things that I have had to read in order to get tidbits of the lived experience of Black women or Latina women, it's very hard to read through the lines the way someone maybe with, and I don't think I'd ever go that route, but with the person that has like the experience and the educational level to and to read that kind of stuff. And honestly, even if I've met so many doctors that are just like, what the heck is this? They're like, what the heck is this? It's too much. So I'm very, very happy you said that, because I'm really looking forward to this already, but knowing that I'll be able to use it on the field as well, it's going to be so important, because that's really where people would need to hear it. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you so much, Josie. Again, I will say, this Zoom call is open till. Are you in DC area right now? Or
yeah, I'm in the DC area. Yeah.
All right. Let's start to close out, because we are supposed to end at 6:30 my time, which is 9:30 your time.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh,
yes,
yes,
it is.
yes.
Yeah, it's dark out this window.
Oh yeah, I can't tell that it's dark.
It's been dark for a while.
So I'm gonna assume it might be dark outside. There's no nice sunlight to keep your skin glowing and illuminated.
Yeah.
There's none of that in DC.
Yeah, it's all run on empty now.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I still gotta submit a report to the researchers before I go to sleep.
Oh yeah, let's give you this time back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Josie, thank
absolutely.
you so much again for joining us, and everyone who's asked some questions. I'm just super thankful. Thank you so much to everyone. Have a great night, and Josie, good luck with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I wanted to say one little thing, because sometimes this gets, I know I'm going to take up all this time, but there on Trans Day of Visibility, Biden put out a huge list of things that were going to help trans people. And one of those things gets overlooked a lot, but I didn't overlook it because I'm a researcher, right? So I'm like, ooh, research. But there is a provision to add gender and gender nonconforming questions to the ACS, which is the American Community Survey, which is by the US Census, but it's like done every year or every few months to kind of like ask people. But what we're able to now start to do is we're actually getting millions of people who are actually able to now identify as gender nonconforming or, trans or non-binary, which is such a huge deal because we did not have that before. So we may now in the next coming years or so have real national benchmarks to actually weight our studies on even more so than ever before because of that executive action done by the administration. I know it's like a tiny little it's a tiny little bullet in that massive list of things that serve trans people. But when we're talking about the nerdy stuff of survey research and survey, data collection, that was probably one of the biggest things I was excited about on that list, because now we're going to have a good head count of trans people in the country, which is different. Never been done before. So yeah, we at NCT are very happy that we were able to help get that in there.
That is incredible.
Yeah, so it's a little things.
Little things matter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's millions of dollars, so it's not too little, right? But it still helps.
What? Millions of dollars? I can just, that's in my wallet right now.
Yeah,
no,
right.
It's definitely not, isn't it? Definitely not. Oh, wow. Josie, well, before you leave for California, I need to, maybe we can meet in real life, maybe one day.
My partner family lives in San Diego, so I'm always in the area in the west on the Pacific coast. So at some point we need to have a beach date or something. It'll be fun.
Absolutely, and maybe one day. So I was born in DC as well. So I was born in DC, but I grew in Pennsylvania, and maybe I make it out to the East Coast one day and stop on the train. maybe. There you go. Wow, we're setting up this date. Everybody in the attendees are like, all right, okay, come on. We can't participate. I don't know why. Anyway, okay. Again, thank you so much, Josie, and thank you everyone who's attended. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for your awesome, incredible questions, and Josie, your incredible answers.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful night.